Let's take a few minutes and explore the various options that we have in a Pro String library. There are not a tremendous amount of options, but there are enough to choose from. And to help us sort through these, we're going to take a look at 5 different aspects that we need to consider when getting a Pro String library, because you may not be able to necessarily pick the one that has all of the articulations ever conceived and that has the best sound, because there are some other things to factor in. The first one is going to be price. Unlike those other kind of general sample libraries that we looked at that are all kind of around the same price, these products that we're going to look at have a range of prices, and they are all pretty pricey. When you're buying a dedicated library that has a lot of features and a lot of flexibility, it's going to cost a pretty penny. So we're going to look at price. We're going to look at sound. If the library doesn't have the sound, the right sound, or the sound for you, it's not going to work for you. Next is going to be the articulations. Some of these products that we're going to look at have less articulations. Some have a ridiculous number of articulations. Depending on your need, that's going to weigh in for you. The next is going to be ease of use. A lot of times you'll see with larger sample libraries, they can sometimes be associated with a lot of patches and a lot of complexity. So that's going to play into, which one you choose as well. And lastly is going to be system requirements. Some of these have really, really large system requirements. Let's take a look at a couple. First up is East West Sounds Online. Now they make a bunch of products. One of them is Hollywood Strings. This is a really, really fantastic sounding string library, and it's available in some different packages. They have a diamond, they have a gold, and they have a silver. If we take a look here at the articulations, you can see they have quite a few articulations. I believe these are recorded with 5 user mixable microphone positions. So they do close, a mid, a main, a surround, and an alternate room microphone. And this gives you a lot of different options in the sound of the strings, because it's not only just a close microphone recording. They also get the sound of the actual sound stage where they recorded this in the East West studios. That makes a big difference. And a couple other libraries that we're going to look at also feature multiple microphone positions as well. We have to look at the price of these. Right now, they're having a bit of a sale. So right now you can buy the Diamond Edition for about $600. But there are some other considerations with this. You can go to the site and listen to these demos. This is a legit sounding collection. Even the Gold Edition still sounds really, really fantastic. A couple of things that you may want to keep in mind if you're considering. One is how you get it. For the larger ones, the Gold Edition and the Diamond Edition ships on a hard drive. It's 310 gigs. It also requires something called an iLok security key. That's not supplied, and that's, if you don't have one, that's going to cost you another $50. If you have this, you put your license code on it, you stick it in your machine, and it says that you can use this sound library. That seems like kind of a great idea, maybe to some people, probably the companies that use this device. I think it's a terrible idea. This is not something that jives with me, because it's to protect them against piracy, but it's at the expense of the user. So it's not something that makes me feel good inside that I have to buy this extra thing, and if there's a problem with it, my string collection all of a sudden doesn't work. You are up a creek, essentially. So that's just something to consider as well. Now, with the larger libraries, with the Platinum and Gold, you want to make sure that you're looking at the recommended system requirements if you're on a Mac or a PC. Using these, you're looking at least 16 gigs of RAM and an SSD for these samples. So this is something to consider. Now, it's a little bit less for their Gold and their Silver Edition, but these also have less articulations, and they don't have all of the mic positions. The Silver Edition has pretty much most of the articulations that you would probably need, but it only has 1 mic position. So you don't get that kind of sound stage sound or that ambience with this. You basically just get 1. So if you need that, you're going to need something like a convolution reverb. And if you don't already have one of those, that may cost you a couple of extra bucks. So that's something to consider as well. But some of the best sounding strings that I have heard. Now, as far as ease of use, they use their own software. It's called Play. using these can involve lots of different patches. It's not the type of thing where you load your violin section, your first violins, and you'd have a bunch of articulations at your disposal. You may need several patches for violin. So that can become a real hassle. You may need multiple patches running in different MIDI channels for each one of those. So it's just something to consider. But as far as the sound goes, this one is a tough one to beat. Now, another one that's pretty popular and sounds really pretty fantastic is LAS, or LA Scoring Strings, by AudioBro. These sound pretty fantastic. They have different packages, just like East West's Hollywood Strings. They have the LAS Full, they have LAS Light. So if you were just looking to dip your toe in the water and you don't want to go full on, you may look at something like LAS Light, which comes with a lot of articulations. You can see here they have a little table. The Light is actually pretty small too. It's 2.8 gigs, so not a tremendous amount of samples, and I don't know exactly how that works out as far as different velocities and round robins and things of that nature. I can't imagine it's too many. Even the silver edition for Hollywood Strings is 12.5 gigs. So I'm guessing that there's probably less. This is another one where you may run into a fair bit of complexity. Now this runs in Kontakt, so they get points there. Something you just want to look over. The price for LAS, the full blown thing right now, it's on sale for $1,000. So, you know, it's that's a considerable purchase. If you're looking at LAS Light, you're looking at about $400. So you really want to investigate and make sure that this has all the sounds. You know, it is pretty small, and for that dollar amount to, you know, make sure that it has what you need. But the demos that I've heard of the full version, they do sound pretty good. Now, because they are recorded in a more dry type environment, they probably would benefit from some kind of convolution reverb, something that's going to use an impulse response to give it that real kind of room sound. Another one that I've come across recently is Kirk Hunter Studios. He has a couple of products, strings and brass. Unfortunately for me, he loses major points for having a website that looks like it was designed in 1998. Not a lot of great stuff going on here. The actual plugin is in Kontakt. It looks a little hokey. And finally, Cinematic Strings. Now, this is the one that stood out to me among all of these as being probably the best fit for someone who's looking to get a string library that doesn't have one already. You know, if you're a professional composer, it's likely that you may have one or more, but if you have nothing, this one seems to me to be the best choice for a couple of reasons. One, the price is pretty good, $500. So it's not the cheapest one out there, but it's definitely pretty far away from those other gigantic collections. Number two, this definitely has the sound. It was recorded with 3 mic positions, a close, a stage, and a room. And then it has a 4th one, which is basically a kind of blended mix of these. It's called mixed. That's actually the one that loads by default. So this really has a really fantastic sound to it. It's got a big, rich, full sound. This is the one that we're going to be looking at. And the reason why I picked it is 1, price, 2, sound, 3, articulations. This definitely doesn't have as many articulations as some of the other libraries, but it's got the important ones. We have Arco with and without vibrato, staccato, pizzicato with Bartok snap. But probably the thing that I like best about this is the ease of use, because there are only 5 patches that you ever have to deal with. They have first, second violins, which are 2. They have viola, cello, and basses. In their 2.0 update, they also added 2 ensemble patches, a light patch and a full ensemble patch. And the thing that I like about this is that it runs in Kontakt. It's really great if you want to get in there and actually start making music and not dealing with tons of patches. And they also don't use any kind of hardware authentication, which I think is very good. The size of this library, you can get it downloadable. So if you have a reasonably fast connection, you can buy this and get it within a couple hours and have it up and running. As far as system requirements, they recommend at least 8 gigs of RAM, because when you load up some of these patches, if you load multiple mic positions, it will use a pretty good amount of RAM per patch. You need a bit of a system to use these, but all of these, you're going to need a little bit of horsepower to be able to run. Some of the larger libraries, you're going to need a fire-breathing dragon in order to be able to run. But I have a reasonably fast computer, a 6-core with 24 gigs of RAM, and it has no problem running this and several other plugins. This is the one that I chose, and this is the one that I've been using. One of the things that people remark about this is that it's only 5 patches. It's not a lot of things to keep track of. You can get in there and start, making music very, very quickly. For me, when I was looking at the range of things that are out there, this is the one that really spoke to me as being a really standout product because of the price. It's got the sound. It has the articulations that I felt were important for me. Most everything that I felt like I've needed to do with this, I've been able to do with it. Probably the biggest thing is that it's very easy to use. It's simple, it's fast, it's not a hassle to use. We're going to take a look at this particular plugin. Now, the things that we're going to be talking about in using a Pro Strings library will be kind of centered around cinematic strings, but they will be things that you'll be able to kind of relate if you have another string library, because we're going to be talking about crescendos and decrescendos and accents and using the different articulations and kind of how you would build some things. And the music that we're going to create with this is going to be on the simpler side of things, because doing some real complex scoring and composition is beyond the scope of this tutorial. But the things that we are going to talk about, the use of vibrato, the use of dynamics, and kind of layering sounds and using the different articulations, those are going to be applicable to essentially all of the other string libraries that we talked about and the other ones that are available. So let's get to using this and opening it up and seeing what we can do with a real string library.